One morning in Denver, a 67-year-old woman received a phone call telling her that her husband, who had died the night before, had just emptied their bank account that very morning. From that moment, her life unraveled. A son's betrayal, a husband's faked death, secrets, blood, and fire twisted together into a labyrinth of guilt. And when everything was reduced to ashes, only one woman stepped calmly out of the wreckage, carrying the one thing no one could ever steal from her: forgiveness. Before we begin this story, let me know where you are listening from in the comments below. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 64 years old. And what I'm about to tell you today will forever change the way you see your own family. I remember the sound first, or rather, the silence. A strange, heavy silence, thick as fog, that made our suburban Denver house feel unfamiliar. After 37 years of marriage, I thought I knew every creak, every whisper of wind through the doorframe. But that morning, there was nothing. Only the hollow stillness that followed Robert's death, recorded coldly in the hospital report at 11:42 p.m. the night before. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a faded mug that said, "Rob," with a dry coffee stain still inside. I didn't cry. The pain didn't come like a storm. It seeped quietly, numbing every sense I had. Ethan knocked on the door. My son, 38, his suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "Mom, I signed the papers at the hospital. Dad's gone." I just nodded. We both sat there in the cold morning sunlight, silent enough to hear the clock ticking, slow and uneven. I caught a whiff of an unfamiliar cologne on his jacket, sharp, expensive, something Robert never wore. A faint unease passed through me, but I ignored it. I didn't have the strength to doubt. By noon, the phone rang. I picked up, thinking it was a nurse or Claire calling from Seattle. A woman's gentle voice came through. "Mrs. Harlow? This is Emily from First Western Bank. I'm calling to confirm a withdrawal made this morning." I froze. "What withdrawal?" "At 9:15 a.m., the full balance of your joint account with Mr. Harlow, $265,000, was withdrawn at our Spear Street branch. The identification and signature were verified." The air turned to ice. I heard myself whisper, voice cracking. "That's impossible. My husband died last night." Silence on the other end. Then the faint sound of typing, followed by a calm reply. "Our system shows the transaction as valid, ma'am." I gripped the edge of the table. Ethan looked up, worried. "Mom, what's wrong?" I couldn't answer. I just looked at him. "The bank said, your father withdrew all the money this morning." Shock flickered briefly in his eyes, then disappeared. Ethan blinked, his tone softening. "It must be a mistake, Mom. A system error. I'll handle it. Don't worry." He said it too quickly, too smoothly, like a line rehearsed. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. He kissed my forehead, said he'd be back that evening. When the door closed and his car engine faded down the street, the house felt hollow, as if all the air had been sucked out. I turned to the sink and opened the faucet. The sound of running water calmed me a little. I looked around. Everything was the same, except me. This house was once where I taught students, raised my children, lived with the man I thought would hold my hand till the end. Now, it was only darkness and a question. Who took that money? By afternoon, I put on my coat and drove to the bank branch. The air outside was dry and sharp, old snow clinging to the curbs. Inside, the scent of perfume mixed with new bills. The branch manager, Jennifer Ruiz, about 40, greeted me with a professional smile. Mrs. Harlow, we've temporarily frozen the account. If you'd like, I can show you the security footage. I nodded. The surveillance room was dim, lit only by the blue glow of small screens. Jennifer rewound the tape to 9:15. A man entered, dark coat, beanie, mask pulled to his chin. He approached the counter, handed over documents, signed. I watched, my heart tightening. The eyebrows, the mouth, the eyes. Painfully familiar. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't Robert. It was Ethan. I heard Jennifer saying something about facial verification and matching signature, but the words were muffled, as if underwater. The footage played in slow motion. The teller counting bills, the envelope slipping into his coat, the man walking away. No rush, no fear. My son, my flesh and blood, pretending to be his dead father. Would you like to contact the police, Mrs. Harlow? Jennifer asked. I stared at the screen. No, not yet. I needed to understand first. I needed proof, and I needed to know why. When I left the bank, the evening wind sliced across my face. I sat in the car, opened my phone. 2 new messages from Ethan. Don't go out too much, Mom. I'm handling the funeral arrangements. The second, love you, Mom. I reread the word love, and it burned like ash in my throat. Driving home, I passed rows of leafless trees bending in the wind. I thought of the times Robert and I drove Ethan to school, the summer evenings eating ice cream by Sloan's Lake. Those happy memories now made my skin crawl, because if the boy I raised could do this, what could I still believe in? I arrived home at sunset. The red light spilled across our wedding photo. Robert smiling, me leaning on his shoulder, Ethan between us, young, confident. Now it looked like a perfect lie. I walked down the hallway and stopped at Robert's study. The door was still locked. I placed my hand on the doorknob, cold as metal in a morgue. For years, I'd respected his privacy, never asked what he kept inside. Now I knew. Some secrets never sleep. I stepped away from the door and called Claire. When I heard her voice, I knew I couldn't keep it in any longer. Sweetheart, I whispered, don't come home. Meet me at Hillside Cafe in an hour. I need to tell you something. Mom, what's going on? I'll explain when you get there. I hung up and grabbed my keys. Before leaving, I paused by an old photograph. The 3 of us on a trip to Wyoming, Ethan smiling, Robert's arm around me. That picture once made me believe family was forever. Not anymore. I stepped onto the porch, snow crunching beneath my boots, streetlights glowing against the violet dusk. I opened my phone and turned on the front door security camera, a new habit of someone who has begun to lose trust. I started the car, my hands trembling. The headlights cut through the dark road ahead. In the rearview mirror, the little house where all our memories began was now just an empty shell. And I realized my pain today wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something far worse. Because somewhere out there, someone was pretending to be my husband. And I feared that someone carried my own blood. I never thought I'd find myself back at the bank the day after my husband's funeral. But that morning, I drove through the icy fog with an empty stomach, a cold heart, and one question looping endlessly in my head. Why did Ethan do it? I didn't dare call him. Not because I feared the answer, but because I feared that hearing his familiar voice would weaken me. Jennifer Ruiz, the branch manager, greeted me with a different expression from the day before. A bit cautious, a bit uneasy, like someone about to reveal something she shouldn't. Mrs. Harlow, she said softly, I reviewed the entire system. All the documents, signatures, and records check out. The man presented your husband's actual ID. I swallowed hard. Are you sure? She nodded. Yes. We've also forwarded the case to our security department for identity fraud verification. But if you'd like, I can show you a clearer copy of the surveillance footage. She inserted a USB drive into the large screen. The frame lit up, sharper than what I'd seen yesterday. I held my breath as the face appeared. Crystal clear. Mercilessly real. No more doubt. It was Ethan. Every movement was chillingly calm. Handing over the card, signing the slip, taking the money. No hesitation, no fear of being recognized. And then, when the camera caught him from the side, he smiled. A small, cold smile. Perfect. As if he were carrying out something he'd planned long ago. I sat frozen. Jennifer said nothing. Finally, she murmured, "We've reported it to the police. A detective will contact you soon." She handed me a business card, Roxanne Fields. I thanked her and stepped outside. Only when the glass doors shut behind me did my knees give way. I leaned against the car, exhaling in heavy, uneven breaths. A mother never wants to believe her son could be a thief. But what other explanation was there? It felt like walking through a distorted dream, where every familiar face slowly turned into that of a stranger. That afternoon, Ethan came to the house with Vanessa, his young wife, all blonde hair and scarlet lipstick that clashed sharply with her black morning dress. "Mom, I finished arranging the funeral home," Ethan said gently. "We can keep the service small. Dad would have wanted that." I nodded, pretending to be calm, though every muscle in my body felt stretched tight as wire. Vanessa strolled around the living room, adjusting the flowers, rearranging the memorial photos like she was setting up a stage. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of everything," she said with a painted smile. I glanced at her hands. A brand new diamond ring sparkled there. Bright, expensive, something I was certain Ethan couldn't afford recently. "Thank you, dear," I replied, forcing my tone soft. "I'm just a little tired." Ethan placed a hand on my shoulder. "You should rest, Mom. Don't think too much. Everything will be fine." His voice was too sweet. It frightened me. A part of me wanted to scream, to ask, "How could you do this to your father?" But I stayed silent, because I knew if he could impersonate the dead to steal money, he could do worse. When night fell, I sat alone in the living room. Darkness draped over the house like a heavy blanket. Streetlight leaked through the curtains, dimming Robert's face in our wedding photo. I picked up my phone and dialed Claire. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "don't come home. Meet me at Hillside Cafe in an hour." Her voice trembled with worry. "Mom, what's happening?" "Don't ask. I just need to see you." I hung up, grabbed my coat, and before leaving the house, I opened the drawer of Robert's desk, where he kept his notebooks. Among bills and scraps of paper, I found a small key engraved with the word "office." I held it tightly in my palm, feeling as though I'd just uncovered the first piece of a much larger mystery. But before I could do anything, the phone rang again. An unknown number. "This is Jennifer Ruiz from the bank, Mrs. Harlow. I just received an internal report. There's something you need to know." Her voice shook slightly. "The withdrawal was made exactly 1 hour after the hospital recorded your husband's time of death." I couldn't speak. My heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" "Yes, the data's confirmed. But there's something stranger. The employee who verified the documents at the counter, was me. And the man looked so much like Mr. Harlow that I didn't doubt for a second. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Harlow. I gripped the phone, feeling my mind splinter. She said, looked exactly like him. I'd seen the footage. It was Ethan. But if even the bank staff had been fooled, that meant Ethan had planned this for a long time. I thanked her and hung up. In the mirror, my face looked pale as paper. I knew I couldn't sit still anymore. I drove to Hillside Cafe. Outside, snow had started to fall, soft, like ashes. Claire was already there, wrapped in a thick coat, her eyes anxious. Mom, what's going on? I told her. Every detail, every number, every second of that footage. Claire went still. He couldn't have. But he did, I said quietly. And I think Ethan's hiding even more. Your father's study. It's locked. Do you remember the cabin in Wyoming? I think your father had secrets he never told us. Claire was silent for a long moment. Then she placed her hand on the table, voice low and steady. If Dad was deceived or threatened, we need to find out. I looked at her. Her eyes were just like mine once were, determined, sharp, unflinching when cornered. I nodded. Tonight, we're opening your father's study. Outside, the snow thickened. Streetlight reflected off the windows, casting our twin shadows against the wall. I knew, at that moment, we had crossed the line from ordinary mother and daughter into two women hunting for truth within their own home. And I also knew, from the moment I answered that call, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I drove home in silence. The streetlights swept by like cold streaks of light, cutting across the windshield. Claire sat beside me, saying nothing. We both understood. Once we had seen that footage, once we had watched Ethan standing at the counter with a face that didn't move a muscle. There was no turning back. Are you sure? I asked quietly. You want to do this with me? I don't want to, Claire replied. But if we don't, no one will believe us. I nodded. That was all. Between us, that silent complicity felt heavier than the night snow. When we got home, the living room lights were already on. Ethan and Vanessa were there, ready, as if they had known exactly when we would arrive. Vanessa sat cross-legged on the couch, her black dress tight around her body, her gaze watchful. Ethan stood by the table, hands in his pockets, a faint smile on his face. Mom, I thought you went to rest? Ethan said. Vanessa and I just wanted to help you arrange the funeral. People have sent so many flowers. I looked around the room. The flowers were real, but excessive, suffocating. The scent of lilies mixed with Vanessa's perfume, sharp and heavy. Thank you, both, I said slowly. But I think I need some space. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice sweet and false. Mom, I understand this loss, but we need to stay united. Dad's gone. Now it's just us. That us sent a chill down my spine. It didn't come from the heart, but from someone who knew she was at the center of a plan. I really loved Dad, she went on, lightly touching the wedding photo. He was so lucky to have you. I only nodded. In the soft yellow light, her diamond ring sparkled. I couldn't take my eyes off it. A perfect stone. And seemingly living proof that Ethan had money. Claire watched from behind me, her lips tightly pressed. I saw the look in her eyes. Anger, disappointment, and something close to contempt. Your son is so thoughtful, Vanessa said, turning to Ethan. He's arranged everything, even booked a little trip so you can relax after the funeral. A trip? I raised an eyebrow. Ethan shrugged, smiling. Just an idea. You need to get out of the house for a while. Yes, I said softly. Out of the house. So everyone has more space to work, perhaps? Ethan's smile disappeared for a split second. What do you mean? Nothing. I'm just tired. I turned away so he couldn't see my eyes. When they left, the house fell into a heavy silence. Only Claire and I remained. My daughter looked at me, her eyes firm. He's hiding something, Mom. And Vanessa, she's acting. Yes, I said. And tonight, we'll find out what. Robert's study was at the end of the hallway, behind a thick wooden door with a bright lock. I took out the small key I had found in the desk drawer yesterday. When I turned it, the click sounded dry, as if the room had just sighed after years of being sealed. Inside smelled of old paper, tobacco, and wood. The walls were covered with shelves, everything arranged too neatly. Not Robert's usual habit. He'd always been messy, notebooks scattered everywhere. But now, everything looked new. Claire opened a desk drawer. Mom, look at this. I came closer. Inside was a bundle of files tied with string, labeled Insurance, Confidential. I opened it. Inside were life insurance papers, but not the version I had signed. The sole beneficiary, Ethan Harlow. I froze. That can't be, I whispered. Claire picked up another document, a deed for a cabin in Wyoming. Dad had a cabin? She asked. I've never heard of it. Then Claire pulled out a stack of credit card statements. The charges, hotels, restaurants, jewelry. One address repeated over and over, Jackson Hole. Maybe Dad. Claire hesitated. Had someone else. That sentence was like a thin blade brushing my skin. I didn't answer. I only stared at the statement, at Robert's signature, the handwriting so familiar, yet now distant. I once thought I knew that man, shared every meal, every Christmas. But maybe I had only known the part he wanted me to see. We kept searching. In a hidden compartment under the desk, Claire found a USB drive. I plugged it into Robert's laptop. The screen lit up, showing a series of audio files titled Ethan 01, Ethan 02. I hadn't opened them yet when a faint sound came from outside. Footsteps, then the front door unlocking. I signaled Claire to stay silent. We held our breath. Ethan's voice came from the living room. Vanessa, can you grab Mom's bag? She left something on the table. Vanessa replied, Okay, but hurry. I'm freezing. My heart pounded. We hurriedly put the documents back, turned off the laptop. Claire slipped the USB into her coat pocket. I put the key away. The study door closed just as the footsteps approached. Mom, Ethan called. I stepped out, forcing a smile. I'm here. Why are you back? I forgot my phone. His eyes darted around quickly, scanning the room, as if checking what I'd been doing. Vanessa held onto his arm, smiling. Let's go, honey. I nodded calmly. Good night, you two. But as the door closed, I swear I heard the faint turn of the outer lock. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to the wind whistling through the window, feeling like someone was watching me. In my palm, the tiny USB felt as heavy as stone. I knew it held the truth, and perhaps the reason my son wanted me silent forever. I wrote a few lines in my notebook, day 2 after the funeral. Ethan lied. Vanessa knows it. Robert had a cabin in Wyoming. The life insurance lists only Ethan. If I disappear, someone must find this USB. I closed the notebook and hid it beneath the window rug, the place where Robert once hid Christmas bonus money. A place he thought was safe. I no longer believed in anything. Before going to bed, I looked out into the yard. The pale yellow light spread over a thin layer of snow, and by the fence, a figure stood still, unmoving. I couldn't tell if it was real or just my imagination, but I knew one thing for sure. From now on, my son's shadow would never leave this house again. I couldn't sleep. All night, I sat on the bed, listening to the ticking of the clock, each sound like a tiny hammer striking time itself. Every tick reminded me my son had betrayed me. My husband might never have been the man I thought he was. And this house, once a home, was now just an empty shell filled with secrets. When dawn crept through the window, I had already made coffee and was waiting for Claire. She arrived bundled in a warm coat, dark circles under her eyes. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Good," I replied, "because today we need to stay sharp." We sat at the kitchen table in the dim yellow light. On the table lay the USB drive I had hidden the night before. I hadn't opened it yet. Maybe because I was afraid. Afraid of what I would hear between Robert and Ethan. Afraid of discovering another layer of truth. But Claire wasn't afraid. She plugged the USB into the laptop, as decisively as a surgeon cutting into an infected wound. The screen lit up. 6 audio files. I clicked the first one. Robert's voice filled the room. Hoarse, tired, but still the voice of the man I had once loved. "Ethan, you can't keep doing this. That money isn't yours." And then Ethan's voice, cold, clear. "You owe me, Dad. You know that. If you don't sign, I'll tell Mom everything. You understand." I listened as my chest tightened. There was the sound of a hand slamming on a table. Then, silence. Claire clicked on another file. "Mom will never believe I'd do that, but I made her believe I'm the good one. Don't worry, Dad. I'll handle it." I turned off the laptop. The screen went black. The kitchen fell silent again, except for my ragged breathing. "He blackmailed Dad," Claire whispered. "Ethan really did it." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. And Robert said nothing. He let it happen. We knew what we had to do next. Find out what Robert had hidden in his study. The room Ethan had forbidden us to touch after the funeral. When the sun rose, we waited for Ethan to leave for work. Vanessa was still asleep, or pretending to sleep, in the guest room. Claire and I quietly opened the study again. The smell of tobacco and old papers spilled out. Morning light slanted across the dusty desk. Claire checked the drawers while I ran my hand along the floorboards. One section felt loose. I pried it with a small knife, and a wooden plank lifted up. Beneath it was an old tin box. Inside were another life insurance contract, recently dated, naming Ethan as the sole beneficiary. A property deed for a cabin in Wyoming under the name Robert Harlow. And a small ring of keys, dusty, with a metal tag engraved J.H. Claire looked up. Wyoming, cabin, J.H. Could that be the other woman? I didn't answer. I stared at the papers, at Robert's signature. Neat, familiar, and now, cutting like a blade turned inward. "Your father had secrets," I said softly. "And Ethan knew." I pulled out another statement and read quickly. Multiple hotel charges in Jackson Hole. The same city name repeating like dried blood. Bills for jewelry, clothes, fine dining. My throat went dry. Robert, the man who taught his students about honesty, who used to account for every penny, had spent thousands on someone else. Claire stood up, her voice trembling but firm. "Mom, I think Dad had another woman." I stayed silent for a long time. Sometimes grief doesn't arrive as tears, but as a pause. In the afternoon, a knock startled me. I quickly hid the tin box in the drawer. A woman stood outside the door, wearing a police coat. Mrs. Sophia Harlow? Yes. I'm Detective Roxanne Fields from the Denver Police Department. I've been assigned to your case, the first Western Bank fraud. My heart pounded. I invited her in. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, the eyes of someone who had seen every kind of lie. I've reviewed the bank footage, she said. The face matches Ethan Harlow, your son. Are you sure you want to pursue this case all the way? The question made me hesitate. Part of me still wanted to believe it was a mistake, that Ethan had been framed. But the recordings, the receipts, his smile while pretending to be his dead father, they all said it was too late for denial. I'm sure, I said. I just want to know why my son did this. Detective Fields nodded. We'll investigate. But you should be careful. When money disappears, people can become more dangerous than you think. Her words echoed in my head long after she left. I turned to Claire. You heard her. People. She meant Ethan. Claire gripped my hand. Mom, if he finds out we've listened to those recordings, what will he do? I looked out of the window. The house was too quiet. Snow began to fall, covering the ground with a thin white layer. Each flake seemed like a warning that time wasn't on our side. That night, I tidied the study. As I was stacking papers, I heard a faint scraping under the floor. I knelt down, shone a flashlight. Someone had pried the boards up and clumsily nailed them back. I knew then that Ethan had come back while I was out. The study no longer held only Robert's secrets. It was now the silent battleground between me and my son. I called Claire, my voice shaking. Sweetheart, don't come home tonight. I think someone's been here. Mom, I'm coming right now. No, don't. If he suspects, we'll lose everything. I hung up and looked around the house. Every photo frame, every familiar object now felt sinister, as if they were watching me. I stepped to the window and looked out into the backyard. Under the porch light, snow covered a set of footprints. Large, heavy, leading straight to the back door, then disappearing. I clenched my hands, cold to the bone. Maybe Ethan had come back, searching for the tin box. Maybe he already knew that I knew. I went upstairs and locked my bedroom door. In the mirror, I no longer saw the woman who once taught students and cooked for her family. I saw someone else, a mother betrayed, a woman about to fight for the truth of her own family. I slid the tin box under the bed, then wrote a line in my notebook. Day 3. Robert betrayed me. Ethan knows. Someone has entered the house. If I disappear, look under the floor in the study. I blew out the candle, and the room sank into darkness. Outside, snow fell thick and slow, quiet as someone's breath, hiding in the night. And in that moment, I understood. What was buried beneath the floorboards wasn't just papers or money. It was the true face of my family. I don't remember what time I opened my eyes that morning. Only that the first light of day slipped through the thin curtains and fell on my hand, still clutching the notebook where I'd written those precautionary lines in case I disappear. Sleep had come in fragments these past nights, always broken by strange noises downstairs. Sometimes it was the creak of a door, sometimes footsteps, or maybe just the imagination of someone who had begun to fear her own house. The knock came at 8 o'clock. I recognized it immediately. Detective Roxanne Fields. She wore a black coat, her hair neatly tied back, her eyes sharp and alert. There was something about her that made me feel both safe and uneasy. The kind of person who could turn your life inside out with a few questions. I have news, Mrs. Harlow, she said, placing a thick folder on the table. We've reviewed the bank footage. The face, height, even the signature, all match Ethan Harlow. And there's something else you should know. I sat down, my palms growing cold. Your son, Roxanne continued, is currently over $3 million in debt, failed real estate investments, plus several fraudulent projects under borrowed investor names. It appears the money withdrawn from your joint account was only the first step in a series of transactions meant to cover that debt. I stayed silent. Each number she spoke dropped into me like a stone into deep water, sending ripples of dread through my chest. We need to question him, Roxanne said. Do I have your permission to conduct it here? I nodded. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect Ethan as a mother would. But another part, the one already scarred, wanted the truth laid bare, no matter how cruel. By afternoon, Ethan arrived. I tried to act normal. Vanessa came with him, wrapped in a white sweater, her eyes darting around the room. When she saw Detective Fields waiting in the living room, her expression froze. Mr. Harlow, Roxanne said evenly, I'm the detective assigned to the First Western Bank case. Ethan looked at me, then at her. What case? I don't understand. You will. She opened her laptop and played the video. The scene of Ethan withdrawing the cash, signing the slip, slipping the envelope into his coat pocket, all in complete silence. When it ended, she asked, Is this you? Ethan laughed, a short, dry sound. No, someone used my image, deep fake. Technology can do anything these days. Roxanne tilted her head. And this signature, also deep fake? The valid ID? Was that fake too? Vanessa cut in, her voice sharp. You can't accuse my husband based on a video. I'm not accusing, Roxanne said. I'm uncovering the truth. I stood nearby, my heart twisting. I looked at my son, the boy who once held my hand on his first day of school, who once promised he'd always protect me. Now sitting there, lying so smoothly it sounded rehearsed. Roxanne closed the laptop. Mr. Harlow, I'll be sending a formal summons. I suggest you cooperate. Ethan crossed his arms, voice low. You're tearing my family apart. No, she said. Your family did that themselves. I saw Vanessa grab his arm, pulling him toward the door, but before leaving, Ethan's eyes met mine. That look froze me. There was no remorse in it, only warning. After they left, Roxanne remained seated. You need to be careful, she said. I have a feeling Ethan's desperate. When people lose control of their finances, they can do anything to hide it, even to their own family. You think he might hurt me? I asked, trembling. I think he might lie to you one more time, and this time, there won't be a chance to fix it. Her words echoed in my mind all evening. Night. The house was still, only the hallway light glowing faintly on the walls. I was sorting through the papers Roxanne had left when I noticed several files in the drawer were missing. I opened every compartment. But yes, the life insurance contract and the Wyoming cabin deed were gone. My heart pounded. I stepped into the living room. The back door was ajar. Cold air poured in. A gust of wind moved the curtains, and I saw a figure outside in the yard. I stepped back, my hand shaking, grabbing the fruit knife from the table. Who's there? I whispered. No reply. Only the sound of snow crunching under someone's feet. I switched on the porch light. The light spread across the steps. The door swung shut, gently, but no one was there. Then, a faint creak came from upstairs. I ran up. The bedroom was in disarray, drawers pulled open. The USB drive, Gone. My whole body trembled. I called Claire, but the phone had no signal, just static, then silence. When I turned back toward the living room, I saw something small on the floor, a shirt button, dark blue. I recognized it immediately, the kind Ethan always wore. I bent over, my chest tightening in pain. There was no more doubt. My son had been in this house. He knew I had listened to the recordings. He knew I had the evidence. And now, he had taken it all back. I collapsed into a chair, tears spilling, not from fear, but from the bitter truth. The son I gave birth to was no longer the boy I once knew. He wasn't just a shadow haunting my heart anymore. He had become a stranger, hunting his own mother. I locked every door, but peace didn't return. The air in the house felt different. Faint smoke, a trace of cologne. Ethan's scent. I looked around. Everything was where it had been, yet nothing felt the same. I knew, from tonight onward, I was no longer safe in my own home. I added one final line to my notebook. Day 4. Ethan entered the house. USB missing. I believe he's hiding Robert. If I die, look for the cabin in Wyoming. I set down the pen and stared out the window. Outside, snow was falling hard, each flake striking the glass like someone knocking. But I knew. The next time there was real knocking, the person standing outside might be my son. The house was silent, as if it had stopped breathing. I sat in the living room, surrounded by thick darkness, the yellow light of the table lamp spilling weakly across scattered papers. The window was half open, the cold wind whistling through the crack, carrying with it the smell of snow and fear. Since the break-in, I hadn't dared to sleep deeply. Every sound startled me. My son, the one I had once believed was my own flesh and blood, was now the person I feared most. I was about to turn off the lamp when the phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, heart pounding, then picked up. A rough male voice came through. Sophia, it's me. I froze. Who? Who is this? It's me, Robert. For a few seconds, the world collapsed. I shot to my feet, my hand shaking, my back against the wall. No, Robert is dead. I saw it. I signed the death certificate. I know. I had to make you believe that. Listen to me, Sophia. I'm not dead. I'm in Wyoming, the cabin at Jackson Hole. My heart was pounding so hard, I had to grip the table to stay upright. Robert, stop this. If this is some kind of joke, it's not a joke. His voice was urgent. Ethan has been blackmailing me for months. He found out about the cabin, about Diana. I had to fake my death to escape. I wanted to tell you, but he found me. He knows I'm alive. And Sophia, he's coming here. A hiss of wind came through the receiver. My hand went cold. Who is Diana? I asked. A nurse at the hospital. She helped me falsify the records. She's Jennifer Ruiz's mother, the bank manager. They both helped me withdraw the money safely before I disappeared. But Ethan? He traced everything. I stepped back, my mind spinning. Where exactly are you? The Harlow cabin on the edge of Grand Teton. Don't trust anyone. Don't tell Ethan. If you want to live, come here. I have evidence, Sophia. Everything Ethan has done. But I'm afraid there's not much time. The line went dead. The dial tone echoed in my ear like the heartbeat of someone collapsing. I sank into the chair. My thoughts shattered. If Robert was alive, then he had betrayed me again. If Ethan knew he was alive, then blood might really be spilled. The next morning, I called Claire. Her voice broke. Mom, say that again. Dad's alive? For now, I said. And if we don't act, maybe not for long. Do you believe him? I don't know. But he said Ethan's after him. And that, I believe. We arranged to meet Detective Fields at the station. Roxanne listened without interrupting, her steady gaze the kind of look that's seen every version of truth and lie. Did you record the call? She asked. I had it on speaker. My phone still has the log. Cabin in Wyoming. We'll verify that. She paused. As for Ethan, I've already requested surveillance, but he's been missing since this morning. Missing? I pressed. Phone's off. Vanessa said he went out to take care of something. But here's the strange part. She came into the station earlier. She said Ethan's been unstable, that he had a can of gasoline in the car, and told her he was ending everything. Do you understand what that means? I felt the blood drain from my face. I gripped the table to keep from falling. Ethan was going after Robert, and I knew the only place they could meet, the cabin in Wyoming. We left the station in silence. Claire and I got in the car. Roxanne followed behind us. The road from Denver to Wyoming stretched endlessly ahead. Wind howled against the windows. Snow began to fall. The sky was thick and gray. All the way there, my thoughts churned with questions. Robert had faked his death. Diana had helped him. Jennifer, Diana's daughter, worked at the bank where Ethan withdrew the money. The entire web was tangled, and I, the blind, trusting woman, was trapped in its center. Claire glanced at me, fear and determination mingling in her eyes. Mom, if Dad really is alive, will you forgive him? I gave a bitter smile. Forgiveness is for the dead, sweetheart. The living have to answer for what they've done. Around 10 that night, we reached the empty road leading into the Grand Teton Range. Snow was deep. The tires squealed against the ice. Roxanne signaled us to stop. Ahead, the sky glowed orange, flames rising in the distance. Claire gasped. Mom, the cabin's on fire. We jumped out of the car. The air reeked of smoke. Red flames devoured the night sky, wood crackling in bursts. Roxanne drew her flashlight and shouted, Get back! There could still be someone inside. And then, from the edge of the trees, a figure appeared. Ethan. He stood motionless, a gas can in his hand, the firelight painting his face in stone. I took a step forward. Ethan, what are you doing? He looked at me, his eyes empty. He was going to leave you, Mom, Ethan said calmly, terrifyingly calm. Leave you. Leave me. Leave everything. I'm just finishing what he started. No, Ethan, you don't understand, I screamed. Your father ran because of you, because you pushed him to it. Ethan laughed, a low, broken sound. Ran? No, Mom. He ran from the truth, and now he can't run anymore. Roxanne raised her gun. Put the can down, Ethan. Now! He looked at her, the smile fading. You don't get it? He said quietly. This isn't about money anymore. It's about honor. Then he threw the can to the ground. A blast erupted. The spark caught, and the explosion roared. I was thrown into the snow. My ears rang. The sound pounded inside my skull. Splinters flew through the air. Roxanne pulled me up. Claire screamed, Mom, are you okay? Black smoke filled the air. When I looked up, Ethan was gone, swallowed by the forest. Amid the wreckage, we found a man lying near the burning cabin, burned but breathing. When the flashlight hit his face, my heart stopped. Robert! He opened his eyes, voice raspy. I told you, Sophia. He came. I held his hand, tears spilling, no longer knowing if they were from pain, rage, or relief. Roxanne shouted for an ambulance. Robert struggled to speak, his lips trembling. I have Proof. In my coat pocket. Give it to Roxanne. Ethan. We'll come back. I took the small USB from his coat. His hand shook slightly. The flames flickered across his face, his eyes wide open on me. I'm sorry, Sophia, for everything. His words faded into the wail of approaching sirens. I stood watching the cabin, the place that had held all our secrets, now a heap of burning ashes in the snow. I knew this wasn't the end. Robert was alive. Ethan had escaped. And in my pocket, the small USB was growing warm like a curse. The truth never dies. It only waits to be revealed. The wail of ambulance sirens tore through the Wyoming night. Red lights flashed across the snow, glinting off Robert's pale face. I sat in the police car, my hands clenched so tightly they turned purple. Robert was alive, but his breathing came in shallow, broken gasps. Claire sat beside me, eyes red from crying, while Roxanne stood outside, speaking urgently into her radio. This area needs to be locked down. The suspect may still be in the forest. He's carrying accelerants. Those words hit me like a vice around my chest. The suspect, my son. I tried to breathe, but the cold air cut through my lungs. Each gust carried the stench of burning wood, the smell of the past, of guilt, of a family that had come apart. Roxanne came to me, resting a hand on my shoulder. Mrs. Harlow, you need to stay at the nearby medical station. My team will track Ethan. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm going with you. If anyone can stop him, it's me. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right, but you'll do exactly as I say. By dawn, we were on the road again, cutting through pine forests heavy with snow. The headlights carved long, bleak lines in the dark. Claire sat in the back seat, holding the USB Robert had handed me before losing consciousness. What's on it, Mom? Everything. Everything Robert recorded. If Ethan finds out, he'll destroy it. Roxanne drove ahead, her voice crackling over the radio. Thermal reading detected to the north. Could be Ethan. My chest tightened. I stared out the window. The gray fog hung over the trees like a burial shroud. When we reached the area, we found a silver SUV crashed against a pole. The doors open, hazard lights flashing. Roxanne motioned for us to stop. She got out first, hand on her gun. Claire and I stayed inside. Outside, the snow fell harder. I could see nothing but a blur of white. Then, a small explosion. Claire screamed. I threw open the door and ran instinctively. Roxanne! Smoke poured from behind the SUV. Roxanne coughed, waving a hand. I'm fine. It's just a smoke grenade. I froze. Dear God! Ethan? He knew how to mislead the police. He was drawing us away from where Robert lay. I shouted through the wind. He's going back to the cabin! Roxanne, he'll kill him! Roxanne spun around, grabbing her radio. All units, return to the cabin immediately. When we arrived, only the charred frame of the cabin remained, smoke still curling from the ashes. Through the haze, I saw a thin figure in a dark coat. Stumbling amid the wreckage, I ran toward him. Robert! He turned, face streaked with soot, coughing. Sophia! Ethan! He's here! Stay calm! I gripped his hand. The police are coming! From behind the trees came the crunch of heavy footsteps. I turned. Ethan emerged, his face smeared with ash, his eyes hollow, lifeless. You shouldn't have come here, Mom, he said quietly, eerily calm. I told you, he was going to leave you. I'm just protecting you. I pulled Robert behind me. That's not protection, Ethan. That's murder. He smiled, a strange, empty smile. Sometimes you have to burn everything to make it clean again. Ethan, put down the gas can! Roxanne shouted from behind, gun raised. He didn't move. The wind blew through his hair, snow melting on his cheeks like tears. I love you, Mom. You know that, right? I choked out. If you still love me, then stop. He looked at me, then at Robert. Hatred flickered in his eyes. He doesn't deserve you. And you never really saw me. Before Roxanne could step closer, Ethan yanked the cap off the gas can and flung it onto the smoldering floorboards. The fumes ignited. An explosion shattered the air. The world turned over. Flames swallowed the night, throwing me hard onto the frozen ground. Everything splintered into noise. Wind, screams, the dull roar ringing in my ears. Claire's voice cried out somewhere in the smoke. Roxanne rushed to pull me up. I coughed violently, my eyes burning. Robert lay a few yards away. I crawled to him, grabbed his hand. Robert, stay with me. He opened his eyes weakly. I'm still here. But Ethan. I turned. But Ethan was gone. Only footprints led into the forest, fast, jagged, vanishing into the dark. Roxanne swept her flashlight across the smoke. He's heading north. I'm calling for backup. I held Robert, feeling his body grow cold. He whispered, Sophia, in my coat pocket, another USB. Don't trust anyone, not even Diana. They lied to you too. I froze. What do you mean? But he had already closed his eyes. The sound of his sirens echoed again, red lights flashing over the snow. I sat amid the smoke and scorched timber, my hands trembling. In the dim light, the flames reflected off Claire's face, filled with fear and heartbreak. I pulled her close, tears spilling freely. Ethan had vanished into the forest. Robert had survived, just long enough to tell half the truth. Roxanne approached, her expression steely. We'll find him. I looked at the dying fire, smoke coiling upward like black serpents into the sky. Find him? I rasped. You don't have to. He'll find us, because now he has nowhere else to go. By morning, snow had buried the valley in white. The ashes of the cabin cooled, leaving only the scent of gasoline and wet soot. I watched the officers comb through the wreckage while Roxanne took notes. Claire sat in the car, staring blankly ahead. I knew this chase wasn't over, and the most terrifying thing wasn't that Ethan was still alive, but that in his eyes last night, I had seen something I recognized. The same look I once had, the look of someone who truly believed they were doing the right thing. Right up until everything burned. The smell of antiseptic filled the hospital room. I sat there, my hand gripping the edge of the bed, staring at Robert's still body. White bandages wrapped around his head, his chest rising weakly beneath the oxygen tube. I'd thought nothing could make my heart tremble anymore. But as I listened to the steady beep beep of the heart monitor, I realized I hated that sound, because it meant he was still here, still breathing the same air as me, carrying his lies in every breath. Claire had fallen asleep in the chair beside him. Detective Roxanne leaned against the wall, holding a file. He's lucky, she said. If the explosion had been any stronger, he wouldn't have made it. Lucky, I repeated, my voice dripping with irony. I'm not sure that's the right word. Roxanne didn't reply. She handed me a small envelope, the USB Robert had given her before passing out. I checked it, she said. You should listen. I plugged it into the laptop. The screen flickered to life, revealing a folder of audio files. Then Robert's voice came through, low, heavy, and painfully real. If you're hearing this, Sophia, it means things have gone too far. I owe you the truth. For years, I've been having an affair Her name is Diana, the nurse from the hospital. I plan to leave with her, to start over. Ethan found out. He threatened to tell you unless I transferred all our savings to him. I thought I was protecting you from humiliation. But I was wrong. His voice cracked. My eyes blurred. Roxanne said nothing. I let him withdraw the money using my ID. Then Diana told me the police were investigating. I panicked. She came up with the idea of faking my death. I agreed. Stupid and cowardly. I thought I could disappear, but Ethan found me. He wanted me dead for real, so no one could uncover his crimes. The recording ended. Silence filled the room. Only the steady beep of the heart monitor remained, a cruel reminder that the truth was still alive, though I wished it wasn't. 3 days later, Robert woke up. When I entered, he looked at me as if seeing a ghost. Sophia. Don't. I cut him off. Don't use that voice. Just talk. Tell me everything. He took a shaky breath, voice hoarse. I loved her, Sophia. But when it all collapsed, I just wanted to disappear. Ethan, he didn't just want the money. He wanted to humiliate me. He said if I didn't fake my death, he'd tell the police I was involved in investment fraud. He would destroy everything. I was afraid. I was afraid too, I whispered. But I didn't run. He lowered his head. I'm sorry. There's no excuse. Then he pulled a tiny USB from the pocket of the coat draped over his chair. This has recordings. Ethan threatening me. Give it to Roxanne. End this. Ethan was arrested 3 days later. I was at the station when they handcuffed him. Gray coat, disheveled hair, eyes cold as stone. Vanessa stood. Behind him, tears streaming. But Ethan didn't look at her once. When he saw me, he smirked. Came to send me off, Mom. No, I said quietly. I came to see what you've become. He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. You made me this way. You loved him more than anyone, even when he betrayed you. And me? I just tried to fix this family's idea of justice. Roxanne signaled to the officers. They led him down the hall, his handcuffs clinking with every step. I thought I might cry. But no. All I felt was an emptiness, like someone had carved out my heart and left a hollow space behind. The next day, Vanessa came to see me. No makeup, tangled hair, swollen eyes. Mrs. Harlow, I need to tell you the truth. I stayed silent. Ethan didn't just blackmail his father, she said, pulling a trembling envelope from her pocket. He did more. He drugged him. A small dose of sedatives to fake a stroke. When Mr. Harlow was admitted, Ethan convinced Diana to falsify the time of death. That's how the whole fake death plan started. My breath caught. And you helped him? She nodded, tears falling. I was stupid. I thought it was only financial fraud. But when Ethan said he'd kill his father for real, I was terrified. I can't live with it anymore. I want to turn myself in. Roxanne took her statement right there in my living room. Vanessa's hand shook as she signed the confession. I looked at her, not with anger, but pity. Do you have children? I asked. No? Good, I said. Don't. Not until you've learned how not to turn them into monsters. A week later, the Ethan Harlow case hit the media. The press called it the family of lies scandal of the decade. Ethan was charged with fraud, extortion, arson, and attempted murder. Diana, the nurse who helped fake Robert's death, was arrested for falsifying medical records. Jennifer Ruiz was suspended, pending trial. Robert was moved to the rehabilitation wing. I visited, not out of love, but closure. He tried to smile, weakly. I don't expect forgiveness, but thank you for not letting Ethan kill me. I looked at him for a long time. I didn't save you. I just didn't want another corpse in my family. He nodded quietly. That evening, I sat outside the hospital. The Wyoming wind blew hard, carrying the smell of new snow. Roxanne came out and handed me a cup of coffee. "It's over," she said. "No," I answered. "It's just changed its shape. Truth lasts longer than people." She gave a faint smile. "Still, you won." "I didn't win," I said, staring into the distance. "I just lost less than the others." In my head, I could still hear Robert's voice, Ethan's voice, and the sound of my heart breaking, beat by beat. Maybe truth doesn't save anyone. Maybe it only frees us from the lies. And freedom, I realized, is a lonely thing. The next morning, I returned to Denver. The small house on Maplewood sat quietly in the pale winter light. I opened the door. The smell of old wood and memory rushed to meet me. On the table, the old photo frame still stood. Me, Robert, Ethan, and Claire. I picked it up, my fingers brushing the faces I'd once loved. "We've hurt each other long enough," I whispered. "It's time to stop." I set the photo down, turned, and opened the window. Cold air flooded the room, sunlight spilling across the floor. For the first time in months, I took a deep breath. And in that chill wind, I heard my own voice, tired but steady. "My son, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I need to be free." The Denver courthouse in March was as cold and still as an abandoned church. No one spoke. Only the faint click of a lawyer's shoes echoed across the marble floor. I sat in the front row, hands clasped tightly together. In front of me stood the defendant's dock, where Ethan would soon appear. 7 months had passed since the night the cabin burned bright against the snow. 7 months since I discovered that Robert, the man who once swore to love me for life, had betrayed me, and that my son, the child I once sang to sleep, had turned love into a crime. Every day since, I'd asked myself, what's left of a mother after all of that? Is it love, or just the habit of never being able to stop forgiving? The doors opened. Ethan walked in, handcuffed, dressed in a pale orange prison uniform. The entire courtroom froze. I couldn't take my eyes off him. The boy who once ran laughing through our garden, now standing before a judge like a stranger. His gaze flicked toward me, cold as steel. But just for a moment, I saw something behind it. Fear, or the faint trace of who he once was. The prosecutor began. Fraud, extortion, arson, attempted murder, falsifying a death certificate. Each charge landed like a hammer strike against the heavy wooden table. Vanessa sat behind him, head bowed. She had confessed, becoming the key witness in exchange for leniency. Detective Roxanne Fields, now the case's primary witness, took the stand. Her voice was steady, precise, stripped of emotion. Digital evidence, recorded statements, and verified documents confirm that the defendant, Ethan Harlow, orchestrated his father's faked death and misappropriated his mother's assets. When the plan began to unravel, the defendant set fire to the cabin to destroy evidence and murder his father. I heard every word, but my mind drifted far away. Behind all the facts, I still saw the face of a little boy who once asked me, "Mom, if I ever get lost, will you come find me?" The defense attorney rose, voice smooth and deliberate. "Your Honor, my client did not act out of malice. He was driven by despair, a product of a childhood lived under the shadow of a controlling father and a mother blinded by faith. He does not need punishment. He needs help." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I lowered my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Help? Who helped me when my own son wanted me dead? When it came time for the victim's statement, they called my name. I stood. My footsteps echoed sharply through the still room. Ethan looked up. My heart ached. Not with anger anymore, but with a sorrow too deep for words. I began. My son destroyed this family while trying to save it. He thought he could control love, justice, and honor with money and lies. But the only thing he ever controlled was the fear inside himself. I lost my husband, my faith, and nearly myself. But I won't let my son's choices define the rest of my life. Ethan bowed his head. I went on. You used to ask me, if I got lost, would you come find me? I found you now, not to save you, but to tell you this. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your sins one more day. The room went silent. Someone behind me sobbed softly. Ethan looked up, eyes glistening. For the first time in years, something real flickered there. Mom, he whispered, barely audible. I shook my head. Live to atone, Ethan. Don't die like your father did. The judge delivered the sentence. 18 years in prison. No one clapped. No one sighed in relief. Justice had come, but it brought no victory, only emptiness. They led Ethan away. The heavy iron door closed behind him with a dull clang, a full stop to everything that once meant home. Roxanne approached. You did the right thing, she said. I gave a faint, weary smile. The right thing saves no one. It only ends it. A week later, Vanessa visited. No makeup? Simple clothes? Eyes tired? I know you won't believe me, she said quietly. But I still love him. Love isn't wrong, I replied. It's wrong when we use it to excuse our sins. She nodded, voice trembling. I'll testify to everything, and I'll raise our child right. I looked at her and smiled faintly. Good. Teach that child what his father never learned, that honesty is the highest form of love. A month later, I returned to the house on Maplewood. Everything was the same. The old wedding photo, the chair where Robert once read the paper, the familiar smell of pine. Only I had changed. No longer afraid, no longer heavy with resentment. I stepped into the garden. The afternoon sun stretched across the distant Rockies. The wind carried the scent of new grass. Claire came out, handing me a cup of tea. Are you all right, Mom? I smiled. I am. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about refusing to let the past rule you. We sat together in silence, watching the sunset drape over the mountains like a soft blanket over old wounds. And I knew then, no matter how many courts exist in this world, the truest trial is always held within the heart, where we decide whether to live by hatred or by grace. That day, for the first time in years, I felt free. A year after the trial, I came back to live in my old house on Maplewood, the place that had witnessed both the happiest and the most broken years of my life. Every morning, I brewed a cup of coffee and sat on the porch, watching the sun climb slowly over the Rockies. The light turned the treetops gold and streamed through the window panes darkened by time. On my first day home, the silence was almost unbearable. But now, that same silence has become the friend I cherish most. In the sound of wind, in the faint creak of old wood, I can hear my own rhythm again. Slow, steady, peaceful enough to remind me that I've survived. This house used to be a prison of memories. Now it's my shelter of peace. I no longer flinch when I pass Robert's study, nor avoid the family photos on the wall. I even rehung our old wedding picture, not out of love, but to remember that once I was capable of loving deeply enough to learn how to let go with equal strength. Robert and I are divorced now. No disputes, no tears. We met at a small cafe near the hospital. He brought an envelope containing the signed papers. He spoke softly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to be free. I looked at him for a long time. His face was older, his eyes dulled by the weight of regret. Robert, I said, forgiveness doesn't set anyone free. Only when we face our sins without excuses, that's when freedom begins. He stayed silent. When I left, he was still sitting there, holding his cold cup of coffee, staring at the street like a man who no longer knew where to go. I didn't look back. Claire lives in Seattle now. She sends photos every week. Her bright face in a nurse's uniform and my brown-haired grandson running in the yard. She says what happened to us taught her the true value of kindness. Mom, she told me over the phone, sometimes I think if all those tragedies hadn't happened, I'd never have learned how to love myself. I laughed softly. Most of us only start truly living after we've lost everything. One spring day, Vanessa sent me a letter. Her handwriting was beautiful, graceful, uncertain. Mrs. Harlow, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I've had a son. I named him Daniel Ethan Harlow, not to remember sin, but to remind myself that in every person, no matter how dark, there once was a spark of light. I read that line again and again, tears falling without knowing why. Perhaps because, for the first time, I saw in someone else the same pain and awakening that I had lived through. I wrote back a few lines. Thank you for keeping what was good in my son. Teach the boy that real strength isn't found in revenge, but in how one stands up after doing wrong. As for Ethan, I saw him only once at Fremont Prison. I remember the fog that morning. The road leading to the gates stretched long and quiet. I signed the visitation forms, passed through 2 sets of heavy doors, each locking behind me like the sound of the past closing shut. The guard led me to the visiting room. When the door opened, Ethan was there. Thinner, hair cropped short, eyes hollow but strangely calm. Mom, he said softly, as if afraid to break something fragile. I sat down. The glass wall separated us. How are you? If existing counts as living, then I guess I'm fine. He gave a faint smile. I thought you'd never want to see me again. I thought so too, I said. But then I realized forgiveness only means something when spoken aloud. I looked straight at him, into the same eyes I used to see every morning when he was small. Ethan, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I can't carry your sins on my shoulders for the rest of my life. He bowed his head. His shoulders trembled. Mom, I'm sorry. I can't go back. I ruined everything. I smiled gently. Don't go back. Just keep walking. But this time, on your own feet. When I left, I looked back through the glass. Ethan was still sitting there, his hand resting on the cold table, watching me go. And in that moment, I knew he had truly begun to pay. Not just with years, but with awakening. That summer, I went to Wyoming, to the place where everything had begun. The cabin was gone, only ashes and wild grass pushing through the blackened ground. I knelt and placed a single violet flower there. You were right, Robert, I whispered. Truth doesn't die. It only waits to be revealed. I stood and breathed in the mountain air. The pines were green, the sky endless. A breeze swept through, carrying the scent of sap and the distant hum of the past. For the first time, I felt free. Back in Denver, I began teaching literature again at a community center. My students were women who had all lost something: husbands, children, faith. I taught them to write their stories, to turn pain into words. One young woman asked, "How can you talk about tragedy without crying anymore?" I smiled. Because I've learned to cry through the page and to love again through silence. At the final class of the year, I read a line from my journal. We can't erase memory, but we can make peace with it. Sometimes, what we need to forget isn't the person, but the way we let them hurt us. This morning, I'm on the porch again. Soft sunlight streams through the window. Claire is on her way, bringing my grandson, a round-faced 2-year-old with curls and eyes clear as water. I set 2 cups of coffee on the table, one for me, one for the daughter who's about to knock on my door. The early summer wind drifts through the lavender bushes. I close my eyes and breathe deeply. Life is strange. It takes us through storms we think we'll never survive, only to make us realize, once peace returns, that those storms shaped who we've become. I was once a weak woman, betrayed, deceived, torn apart by those I loved. Now, I'm a mother who has learned to live without hatred, a woman who understands that forgiveness isn't an ending, but another beginning, softer, stronger. I look toward the horizon, where sunlight spills over the Rockies, and a whisper. In the end, we can still love this life, even after it's taken everything from us. And if you're hearing my story, perhaps you too have been hurt, betrayed, or wanted revenge. But let me ask you this. If one day the person who broke you knelt before you, what would you do? Would you let hatred bind you, or forgiveness set you free? Because I chose forgiveness, not to save them, but to save myself. The sky brightens. I take a sip of coffee and smile. A new day begins, not perfect, not loud, but entirely mine. And perhaps, after everything, that is the gentlest form of justice life can give. I finally understood. Revenge never lightens the heart. It only makes the hands grow colder. Forgiveness isn't about being noble or proving strength. It's simply the way I stop letting others control my pain. I have lost too much, but I have kept myself. That dawn, I sat alone, watching the sun rise over the snowy range, and realized sometimes the only justice life grants us is the right to begin again. And if you are still reading, tell me, if one day you were in my place, would you choose revenge or choose forgiveness? I don't need the right answer. I just want to hear the true voice of your heart.